Hey guys, and welcome into another spoiler review. So today's film I'm going to be reviewing is Superman, the recent release starring David Corenswet. So to give you a brief plot rundown, this film really just launches straight into a new universe helmed by James Gunn, who's the director of this film. It's the start where Superman now is well established. He's 3 years into his tenure as Superman, and he's finally met his match in the form of Lex Luthor and Ultraman. So this film is at the core of it is that he has a message that is from Jor-El, his parents, his biological parents. Meanwhile, he's raised by Pa and Ma Kent, and the message from Jor-El that he believed at the beginning was a positive one about coming to Earth and being a good symbol and all of that. But then it's revealed the second half of that message is to actually conquer Earth, to make a harem out of the women on Earth, and to spread his seed and all of that. And this kind of sends Superman into like a personality crisis, identity crisis, if you will. And then he ends up in a pocket dimension by Lex Luthor when he turns himself in, and he has to break free of that and to stop conflicts both in Bavaria between these two made up countries of Bavaria and Jahanpur, and also with a kind of a fissure that's happening in Metropolis. And so he's got the Justice Gang as well helping him, all of that. So there's a lot going on in this film, a lot to unpack, and I'm going to talk about what I liked and disliked in it when I get into it. So starting off with what I liked. Superman, Lois Lane, and Mr. Terrific to me were the standout performances and characters that I enjoyed in this film. It's great to have Superman being likable in a Superman film, obviously, but it was nice to also see Lois Lane done pretty well, and Mr. Terrific definitely gets some standout moments, and he's a really cool character as well. I really love the performances. I'm not going to say that the writing for their characters was the greatest, but definitely the performances by the actors I thought really brought them to life and made us love them. And I think David Corenswet is definitely endearing as Superman and Clark Kent, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of him in this universe, preferably with a different writer and director. But I think definitely he's the man for the job, and I'm happy to see him going forward. He definitely has that emotional range that is required for Superman. He can do the serious and stoic, and he can do emotional, frustrated, all sorts of things. Meanwhile, Lois Lane, Rachel Brosnahan playing her, definitely has had that really journalist vibe, that interrogative kind of pessimistic attitude towards the world and questioning everything. I liked a lot of that about her, and Mr. Terrific being that really serious, stoic kind of member of the team who's very dry and has those quick remarks. Really, it can be funny at times too. I thought he was great as well. So those were the three main standouts for me from the characters. Another thing I liked was the comic book feel of the film. It was stated going into this film that James Gunn really wanted to make this universe feel like a comic book come to life. And I do have to say, it does feel like that, the way it's kind of thrust on us. There's no setup or origin for any of the characters, really. We're just kind of thrown into this universe and have to do the catching up ourselves. So I very much appreciated that. And I liked the feel, more kind of bright colors compared to the previous iterations of the DC under Zack Snyder, which I felt were more kind of dry, more kind of grayed and toned down. This one really embraces the color of comic books, and I like that, and from a like tangible and kind of superficial standpoint. Also in the light column is the central premise, which I feel is it takes place really in that first conversation between Clark and Lois when Lois is interviewing him in their apartment. So I really loved their whole conversation from start to finish. There's a couple of moments where I felt Clark acted a bit strange, but for the most part, the content of their conversation I thought was great and felt very natural and organic to a couple that had been seeing each other for a few months at this point. But meanwhile, she's kind of the more like pessimistic one who's always like questioning people, and that meanwhile he's a bit more naive. He sees the beauty in people and all of that, and so it's nice to see that kind of yin and yang clashing with each other over the questions that she's interrogating him with. And the kind of that central premise in the middle of it where they're talking about this conflict between these two countries that is reminiscent of some conflicts going on in the world today. And I really love that kind of juxtaposition, that where she's trying to show how Superman does things that really are, go beyond like the realm of what any human is allowed to do, where he can cross country borders. He doesn't need to consult presidents or secretaries of states or militaries, anything like that. He just goes in and does what he needs to do. And his defense of that is that he's saving lives. And meanwhile, she's saying, yeah, but have you thought about the ramifications for this? Because you are doing things that are kind of dictatorial, but without even knowing it. I really love that. I really wish that was paid off more later on in the film, but as a central premise, I thought that was rock solid. I would have loved for it to have been explored even more. As this is a Superman film, there is of course going to be action sequences, and I thought most of the action sequences we got in this film were quite good, where you get to really see Superman using his abilities, whether it be like spinning or lasers or flying really fast or whatever it is. We got to see a range of his different strengths. And I enjoyed that. There's aspects to it where I didn't like when he was kind of pinned down in the pocket universe for a lot of this film, and I didn't appreciate that. But outside of those ones, the kaiju fight, the end battle against Ultraman, and the robots or whatever, I forgot what they're called, but basically I thought a lot of that was great stuff and it was fun to watch. And to summarize what I liked is that most of these things I've talked about really take place in the first 25 to 30 minutes of the film, which I feel is the strongest portion, where we get to see like the things being introduced, Superman having to deal with certain things and how he interacts with this world, how he's constantly saving people whilst fighting a kaiju and all this kind of stuff going on. I felt like a lot of that was really strong and solid stuff until the message that comes from Jor-El, which reveals the true intentions of his message. It wasn't the message itself that really took me out of the film, but it was the turn that it took, particularly when they got to the pocket universe there. I felt like the film was starting to go downhill from there. And so I really enjoyed that first 25, 30, and I wish they had stuck to being in Metropolis for all of it, or most of the film at least, but like it really did divert from that. And so I did enjoy the first 25, 30 minutes. Now for what I disliked, and starting off is the pacing. So this film, the issue I have with it is that even though it's a 2 hour runtime, it goes rocket fast, like a speeding bullet, but not in a good way. I felt like the editing between each scene was just so choppy that there was no room for each scene to breathe individually before as it flows into the next one. It was rather just ends and then goes to the next one. An example of this is at the very beginning when Superman, already we show him in the snow at the beginning, he's beaten it, he's lost his first fight, and then he goes back to that fight to take on the Hammer of Baravia and loses once again, gets thrown down into the ground, and the hammer just takes off. And Superman, doesn't do anything about that. You would think he's lost his first fight. He should be desperate to figure out who this was so that he can, counter him and defeat him. But instead, it just cuts hard to Daily Planet the next day, and Clark's making his way to work. And I didn't. That was kind of how the film went. It didn't deal with the consequences of scenes enough or at all. Instead, just jump to the next scene. So it's kind of just like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. Had that kind of style of storytelling rather than this happened, therefore this happened, and therefore this happened. It's just that's how it should go, but rather it just kept piling on things that were happening. But so it just really felt like really poor editing at the end. Another thing I didn't like about this film, which I'd mentioned before, is the pocket universe. So this takes up a large chunk of the second act, and I felt it really brought this film down a few notches where I was enjoying it up until that point, and then it just started to go downhill. And it's just that it just got too wacky in there, too wacky to buy into to take seriously what was going on. It should be a story, but there's a man we see get killed by Lex Luthor. There's another man who's trying to save his child, and it just all feels kind of goofy rather than taken seriously. And so I had a lot of issues with that portion of the film that I felt I would have much preferred to have seen Superman flying around Metropolis, taking on villains and different things. But instead, he's just there. He's down on his power for most of the time. He's beaten and all of that. And so I just did not enjoy that portion of the film at all. I didn't dislike the third act as much as the second, but I still felt it was lackluster in the sense that this is the third act. This is where everything should culminate. It should be really intense stuff. We should be like on the edge of our seat. And that wasn't there. It was basic kind of generic action, nothing crazy, no amazing stakes. He didn't have to save Lois or anything like that. No emotional core to it. It was very much just kind of shallow, just mindless action. And it was entertaining, but nothing really edge of your seat kind of stuff where you were invested in what was going on. And then there's Krypto, the dog. So I've seen this film 2 times now, and the first time I definitely was disliked him more, tolerated him more the second time, but ultimately it's just too goofy. Like it takes away from the serious like accomplishments that Superman has in the film because he's just there kicking ass as well, and just makes it more cutesy kind of goofy scene rather than something that could be really serious and emotional and powerful. He just kind of takes away from that. And I get it, people love dogs and they love to see dogs do dog things, and just this dog acts like a typical dog but with superpowers. And so I know most people are going to enjoy that just in kind of like a superficial aspect, but to me, he takes away from the seriousness of this film, like a lot of things do. Next is the Justice Gang. So I didn't dislike the Justice Gang. I think the 3 characters are actually quite good to varying degrees, but I feel like they were misused in this film. Firstly, they shouldn't have been in the film at all because should be Superman's film. It should be way scaled down with the amount of characters so we can just focus on him really. But instead, they're there and they take up a bunch of screen time too. But the reason I say they were misused is because they're really just part of a team, sort of, with Superman. They want Superman part of the team. He doesn't want to be part of it, but it's not. There's no depth to them. And what I mean that could have been done so much better is that if we were thrown into this universe and groups like the Justice Gang exist, and it's shown that they are heroes in the sense that they are financed to be heroes, but they don't really care about people, saving lives, saving the collateral damage, all of that stuff. So, but then you have the contrast to that Superman really cares about these things. He really cares about saving human lives, about preserving property damage, all of these things. That would have shown a really sharp contrast in why Superman is the ideal. They touched on it tiny bits, but nowhere near enough. If you've got this Justice Gang in the film, you have not done anywhere near enough with them with what you should. And the fact that Mr. Terrific goes off on his own with Lois Lane for half the film just kind of makes it pointless that they're a team anyways, because even in the final act, Mr. Terrific is with Superman in Metropolis whilst Guy Gardner and Hawkgirl go to Bavaria for that conflict. So it doesn't even feel like a team at the end of the film. So they don't really serve a purpose in that regard. And then there's the payoff to the conflict between Bavaria and Jaranpur, or rather the lack of a payoff to this one. So it's set up, as I said early on in the film, the conversation between Clark and Lois. This is the central premise. This conflict, the question of this one and Superman's intervention in it is the core to the film. It is the central core of what it's all about and what we are going to discover about his character and why Superman is necessary. I was so upset and disappointed when Superman does not show up there to save the day. Instead, the Justice Gang go there. I was like, what the hell are you doing? This is your chance to answer the question, to have the big payoff from the big setup at the beginning. And it could have been awesome to see Superman liberating these people that are being invaded by this other force, and just it would have been amazing to watch him take on those armed forces and to just save the day from them. And while they're holding up that that flag, and whilst the John Williams score is playing, could have been so incredibly epic, but instead they didn't do it. So there was no payoff to the central conflict of the film, the central premise. And so that might be the most disappointing aspect of the film for me. And no matter if the film kind of improves in my mind, that will always bug me no matter how many times I watch this film. Another thing I didn't like is that Superman is constantly getting his ass handed to him in this film. He gets beaten down so much in this film that at certain points you forget that he is the Man of Steel. Like, it doesn't resonate for most of the film that he is Superman, the Man of Steel. He's essentially invincible. He just gets beaten over and over, and I have no problem with him getting beaten down once or twice in a film to create some stakes. But when he is constantly getting beaten down, it just doesn't feel like he's that super. He just feels like mediocre man, really. And so that bothered me, seeing him get beaten down that much. Again, I have no problem with it a couple times here and there, but when it's that much, he lacks all weight to the man that he's meant to be, Superman. And there is a lot of humor in this film, which I felt works to its disadvantage, and it's typical James Gunn Guardians of the Galaxy style humor, where he just cannot let a moment sit and have a serious moment be played out. He has to undercut every serious moment or speech or whatever with a joke. And I'll give you a couple examples. There's a scene where after Superman has found out the true message from Jor-El, he's there in his apartment and Lois is there talking to him, trying to help him out. And he's very down about the whole situation. And then they're having a serious heart-to-heart with each other on these couches. Meanwhile, in the background, in the window, the Justice Gang are fighting this alien imp, which is consuming the whole background and is a genuine threat to the city. Superman is not there helping them out when he should be, and that's damaging to his character. But the whole most annoying part is that it's just played for a joke. It's not played for any significant thing to say that he is so down that he doesn't feel like saving the day. It's more so just played for a dumb joke, and that really pissed me off. And another moment that pissed me off is that towards the end of the film, when Superman is confronting Lex, when he's essentially defeated Lex and he's talking to him now and telling him why he's wrong, Lex is about to come back at Superman. It could be great. And then Krypto jumps in and starts beating the hell out of Lex, biting the hell out of him. And it's meant to be reminiscent of the whole Hulk and Loki scene from the Avengers. And it just summed up the film perfectly, that every chance there was to have a very serious moment undercut by a dumb joke. And that bugged the hell out of me. And those two scenes are just good examples, but there were many more just like them. And I had two major concerns going into this film when I was hearing about its development for years now. Those two concerns were, this sounds like there's too many characters in this film for a first Superman film in a new universe. But the other issue was James Gunn. He's a great director in his lane when he's working with ensemble cast of these sort of ragtag, quirky characters who are sort of like anti-hero types. He works brilliantly in that genre. Can he take on a serious and stoic character like Superman? And the answer to both those questions is kind of no. They were mistakes. There were too many characters in this film. I liked all the characters in this film, but they were all spread so thin that we didn't get really enough with any of them, including Superman. Would have loved a lot more with him and his relationship with Lois, and even more time as just Clark Kent. We barely got any Clark Kent in this film, and that was a shame. And then just, yeah, as I said, too crowded. This film was way too many, and that was my fear from the beginning. And cherry on the top is that James Gunn is confirmed not the right guy for a Superman film. I thought he came with a very mid film here, slightly above average maybe, but it had so much more potential to be amazing. And especially with this cast, I think it was a brilliantly cast film, and that might be its strongest point. But he was the wrong guy for the job, both from a directing and writing standpoint. He made it Guardians of the Galaxy in a Superman film. Basically, that's the crux of it. So that's my overall thoughts. There's a lot more things that I disliked about this film than I liked, but somehow I do have, now that I've had the chance to watch it a second time, I do have a slightly more positive view on it, just for some little key, maybe superficial aspects, or just some things did have slightly more connective tissue this time around. Now that my expectations were gone, I knew what to expect. I was just watching the film for what it was. I think I will notch it up a little bit. My initial out of the theater review of it was like a 5 out of 10, somewhere in that realm. But now I'm probably somewhere like a 6 out of 10. If I'm being very generous, a 6.5 for the entertainment factor. So maybe I'll just go with 6.5 to be nice, but that's as high as I'll go with this film. I can't see it getting any higher than that for me, no matter how many times I rewatch it. But yeah, this is a mid, slightly above average film. Disappointing in that regard, because I wanted it to be absolutely amazing, and it just wasn't. It was just mid at best. And yeah, it's a shame, because this is the start of a new universe, but at the same time, there's enough building blocks in this film that they can really take it somewhere in the next entries, if I think someone else is at the helm who's writing and all of that. It just needs a new creative on top, but with the same cast, I think you can do some really great stuff. So 6.5 out of 10 for Superman. That's my review of this film. Hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you think of the film? Did you think it was amazing, bad, mid, whatever it is? I want to hear them all. Please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.